was a lot of stuff going on in the country. We were a little bit isolated from it. We were aware of that stuff going on, but we were so focused on what we had to do and still had a long way to go.
All we knew was going to work, training, hitting the singing wheel after work or late night after some pad tests, and getting home at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And our poor wives just put up with it. It's a shame. But that was a sense of fulfillment. It was like being in a warm blanket.
We had a job to do. We understood the scope of that job, and we worked hard every day. You know, most people would say, "What are you working on?" And we said, "I'm working on going to the moon." We've been working on an Apollo-type program, going to the moon and trying to understand what was involved. There was a lot of spade work done before President Kennedy made that announcement. Of course, that provided a tremendous amount of momentum.
Well, I remember when the Russians first launched the first satellite, and I was at a college football game and the thing went over, and I think we could see it. I think it was at a time when it was reflective. But if you had a little radio thing, you could hear the beep, beep, beep of this.
Well, when I think about back when I got selected as an astronaut, when I got down here, we were one of 30 astronauts. I didn't know one of them. Most of them were test pilots. About a half a dozen of us were fighter pilots. And I had no idea really what the job involved other than the objective of getting into space. And I looked at that as just another step beyond flying.
I always thought it was meant to be. I don't know for sure, but it seemed like it was wonderful. Because when I would go interview with oil companies, they would go, they wanted to give me secretarial jobs or something. That wasn't what I'd done all that schooling for. I grew up in Livingston, Texas, which is a small town at that time and had a population of about 3,500. But I'd had the basics. Nothing fancy, but the basics. And when I went to school, I started with a major in math because I just flat loved math. And I didn't even meet physics until I started at the University of Houston, which was when I was a junior. I just thought I died and got to heaven. I mean, physics was fun. And physics was solving problems. And physics was actually using the math. So I really enjoyed the physics.
Born and raised in Beaumont, Texas. Went to Lamar University. Over there was Lamar State College of Technology at the time. I was at home on a Christmas and ran into an old college buddy of mine. He was over here in Houston working, so I came over for an interview. Gene had this narrow office. Behind his desk was a whiteboard, but he had all these different remote sites listed. And he was on the phone when I came in, and he was saying things like, okay, I've got so-and-so and so-and-so headed to Zanzibar. I need them to get passports. I've got this and that. And it's, he's talking on these overseas remote sites and stuff. That just sounded fantastic to me.
I suspect it's kind of like joining the Army where, you come in and everybody, luckily, has got a common goal. What you do, you become a band of brothers and sisters.
I would say it was the greatest thing any engineer like myself could ever have as a job to do. It was a hell of a challenge. Can't think of a bigger challenge. I can't think of a better challenge. I can't think of a better thing I'd rather do every morning. So I was happy to get up and go to the office every morning. I was happy to work 10, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I had quite a few thousand people that were willing to do the same thing.
Those of us who were here, that were going to fly the spacecraft in those days, it was not as an amazing a thing to do as to the public at large. We looked at it as another step forward. It was reaching out for the stars. We were all interested in flying faster, farther, higher.
You're doing what you were trained to do and what you had become to do, and nothing was better.
They allowed me to travel to places where the Air Force, like Wright Pat up in Ohio was working on little rockets, and it was just so interesting and exciting, and I was like a sponge, soaked it all up. I viewed it as such an opportunity. It was so much fun, and rocket engines for a chemical engineer are just a delight, man. You can't possibly work on anything more interesting, in my view, than a rocket engine, unless maybe it's brewing beer or something.
Turns out that we were very aggressive personalities. If we didn't agree with you, we'd stick our fingers in your eye and tell you what we thought of your mother. Among those reasons, because we were all so aggressive, was the reason we got done what we got done. We didn't care what you thought. If you didn't think what we thought, tough luck.
Probably I had some of the worst treatment I've ever had in the first year. And in today's age, they'd probably all be in jail or something, or at least gotten fired, but that wasn't going to happen then. But you have to understand, I grew up with 4 younger brothers. I can put up with just about any male nonsense. So one day a bunch of them had been out, and they came back, and I was in a second story of that apartment building because I wanted to go use the big drafting boards to do this little bitty thing I was drafting for somebody. I'm sitting up on a high stool, and I'm on a drafting board, and I'm working on something intently. So I'm not paying any attention. I can go into one of those modes, and I don't know there's anybody around. And all of a sudden, somebody's going, and there are about 10 men standing behind me and another 10 over here. And I'm looking at them like, what are you doing? And they're going, and up on the top of the big drafting board, they've got a piece of computer paper. And they yank it off, and here's a little garter snake or garden snake, or definitely not venomous. And I looked at them, and they were waiting for me to scream or jump up or do something. So I just reached over and picked it up, turned around the guy behind me and said, go play somewhere else. That probably did more for my NASA career than any work I ever did.
Time and time again, somebody will ask me, were you afraid when you lifted off? And I said, the only thing that really got us irritated there at the liftoff is we were planning on lifting off at 11 o'clock in the morning. A couple minutes to go before launch, and they said, put it on hold. Had to put it on hold to get the pressure back up in one of our tanks because it was 1 or 2 pounds low. And we says, no, it's okay, let's go like it is. Nope, they overran it. They went ahead, it delayed our launch by 2 minutes and 54 seconds, I think, and that irritated us.
In those days, when we first moved on site at the Johnson Space Center, you could come in at 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and half of the cars would be in the parking lot, and you could go out and you could work till 6 and go out and get in your car to go home, and half of the parking lot is still full, and then you could sleep a little late on Saturday morning and maybe come in at 10 or 10:30, and there's half of the cars are in the parking lot. It was hard on families. It was. I look back now and think, I missed some time with my kids, and I know my wife, took a hit because she was doing stuff that Daddy ought to be there doing, that kind of stuff. But after the landing, there was such a great gesture by Dr. Gilruth and NASA and the center. They sent a letter to every spouse. Dr. Gilruth signed all those, came to my wife saying, I want to thank you for your sacrifices and what you did to enable Norman Chaffee to do his job that allowed us to complete this job that we were given by the U.S. government, She cherishes that, and so do I, so.
I think in the recovery forces, we lost something like 15 people. Had an airplane hit a mountain in Africa, and had a crew lost at off Bermuda taking some pictures. You don't hear much about that, but the 14 astronauts you hear about. The effort of the country on Apollo was much bigger than history talks about.
I was proud as hell to be a part of what they were and be a part of what they did. I don't know how you could ever do anything better in your lifetime as an engineer or a leader.